that as we drive the economy this year and for next year's election, you will see conditions improve, but sure enough, you will see the consequence of the inflation that we have today. In a couple years, you will see the recession, if not the depression of '86 or '87.
On October 16, 1987, waves of sell orders plunged the Dow Jones Industrial Average to a 108-point loss. Analysts attributed the market decline to the dollar's weakness, trade imbalances, a rise in interest rates.
Ron, there's an old statement I've read and heard about people saying in Congress, the banks never lose.
Well, I think that's a general statement. I think the big bankers never lose. But I think a little banker right now is losing a lot because a lot of little bankers are getting closed down. The big banks are gobbling them up. I don't think David Rockefeller is going to lose. I don't think he's going to be out selling apples or pushing pencils anytime soon. But a lot of bankers that are being wiped out at the state level are losing. But the big banking power structure seems to have control because they're on the inside and they have control of money and they know what policy is going to be down the road.
Can you specify this structure, this you're talking about, this power structure?
Well, the power structure basically is made up of a lot of very powerful business and corporate leaders in the country. And in particular, they have formed their organizations. They've been around for a good while, and they don't even hide it anymore. You know, the Trilateral Commission, as well as the Council of Foreign Relations. No matter which president, which party is in power, they will appoint to the major offices members of these two committees. And they always have control of the Federal Reserve System. So the Wall Streeters, the big bankers, have inside information as far as what is happening and what's going on.
An international dollar crisis will dramatically boost interest rates in the United States. Price inflation with a major economic downturn will decimate U.S. federal government finances and exploding deficits and uncontrolled spending. Federal Reserve policy will continue at an expanding rate with massive credit expansion, which will make the dollar crisis worse. Gold will be seen as an alternative to paper money as it returns to its historic role as money.
Actually lifted a speech that you made in the Banking Committee on September 10th, 2003. I remember that date because your words were so dramatic. Ron, prophetic. You said, while everybody else was saying, oh, if we don't help people out through these loans of Fannie and Freddie, then we're just horrible people, we hate poor people. You said, and you predicted, you said, if we continue to inflate this bubble this way, the housing crisis is going to cause an explosion and there's going to be damage worldwide. What did you know, Ron Paul, in 2003 that nobody else on the Banking Committee or in the United States Congress or in the media know? What did you know?
Well, I think it reflects an understanding of economics. I didn't know anything special other than the fact that I had studied Austrian economics.
Question: will homes be worth more or less in 2007? Peter,
most of the profits that people have in real estate are going to vanish, just like the profits in the dot-coms in 1999-2000. It's a fantasy. People can't sell their house. The inventories are exploding all over the country. Houses are on the market for 6 months a year. There's no bidders. The prices are going to fall through the floor. You guys are deluding yourself.
We heard it loud and clear from all of our panelists. We thank you very much.
And Stein, you say this could be a perfect storm for buyers. What do you mean?
I mean that the credit crunch is way overblown. The financials are being given away. They're so unbelievably cheap.
With us, Peter, we know that you have supported Ron Paul as a candidate. When you hear from people like David say, you know what, Wall Street just wants a winner, what do you think of that theory?
No, that's not a good theory. Wall Street gets just about everything wrong, and I guess politics is no exception. I mean, the public wants change, and the reason they want change is because we're in a severe recession. We got runaway inflation. The only person that can deliver meaningful change is Ron Paul. He's the only one that understands the mess that we're in. He knows how we got into this mess, and he understands what's going to be necessary so that we can dig our way out of this hole.
Also, to solve this problem, you have to understand why we're in a recession. I believe we're in a recession. I think it's going to get a lot worse. They could do a whole lot by having sound money where we don't print the money out of thin air. That causes the business cycle. That causes your bubbles. We're always dealing with the symptoms and the disease and never saying, how did this come about? It comes about because we have a Federal Reserve that creates money and credit out of thin air. There's a lot of malinvestment. That's the most important thing to understand about the inflation of the monetary system, is the malinvestment. Then later on, people suffer. You wipe out a middle class. And how are you going to protect the dollar? If you don't have the dollar maintaining its value, no matter where you put the money, you're not going to have any value. That's where the crisis is coming. You're going to go up with all these cost of living increases, but you'll never keep up with the cost of living because the dollar is going down, the cost of living is going up. Our dollar today is worth 4 cents compared to the dollar of 1913 when the Federal Reserve took charge of it. And if you don't deal with the dollar, there will be no retirement for anybody. We're going to have chaos.
Exactly. There was one, Ron Paul, but they drummed him out of the Republican Party. I mean, nobody would pay him any attention. He's the only guy that has the courage to speak the truth. Look at what he says on the Senate Banking Committee when he talks to Ben Bernanke and when he talked to Alan Greenspan all these years. He's talked about all this. He's warned about all this, but everybody has ignored him and others like him. I mean, I get marginalized in the mainstream financial world just like Ron Paul has been marginalized in the political world.
Right. Either one of you guys think that we have a candidate that will reduce the size of government?
Just Ron Paul, who you're going to be interviewing later, and unfortunately, he's not running.
Yeah,
maybe we can all write his name in.
All right. Peter,
I agree.
Steve, thank you very much.
Congressman Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The best way I could describe the problems that we face here in this country, as well as the problem that the Federal Reserve faces, is that we're indeed between the rock and the hard place, because we have a serious problem. We don't talk about much how we got here. We talk about how we're going to patch it up. The bubble has been burst. We saw what happened after the NASDAQ bubble burst. We don't ask how it was created, and then we have a housing bubble, and it's deflating and it's spreading. And yet nobody says, where does it come from? And what is the advice that you generally get? And that is, inflate the currency. They don't say inflate the currency. They don't say debase the currency. They don't say devalue the currency. They don't say cheat the people who are saved. They say lower the interest rates.
So I see the issue of power and the control over money as being something that we cannot ignore, we must address. I believe closely associated with this is the issue of morality as well. By what moral right do we have to create purchasing power out of thin air? Whether it's done by the creation of credit or Federal Reserve notes, or whether it's the creation of SDRs in an international scope, by what right do they do this?